moving from B2C to B2B, it's very different. You can look at a lot of the metrics on the B2C side and really, pull a lot of levers that are pretty obvious to see from, analytics side. But B2B is customers that are at their day job, purchasing from us and trying to really build an experience out that saves them time.
2 to 25 is a massive jump. What were some of the first things that you felt could improve adoption?
Building tools that actually gave them value. There's plenty of HVAC distributors out there. Most of the units have the same, end purpose, but it's the service and it's the tools that, help them drive their business.
You talked about being at the branch. What kind of roles did you have prior to inheriting the e-com?
Entry level, sweeping up the warehouse, loading up trucks, did a little bit of the counter sales as well. So got to see both aspects of it before went off to college and then came back into the business.
How do your actual people respond to digital inside of your organization differently?
They can get used to a website with time and effort. That's what it takes, is effort one-on-one and in a group setting, and really framing it kind of like a sales playbook. Here's the top 5 sales plays that you can have when it comes to digital and how that conversation goes.
Like, what's your relationship with kind of your key technology partners?
And that's the best part, is that I'm able to focus on the internal adoption and, focus on understanding the business, the model, and how it flows day to day. I know I have a partner that can really help push our vision forward in the right direction.
AJ, welcome to Greenville. Have you ever been to Greenville?
No, first time.
First time. Where do you live?
Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, Texas. Have you been there most of your life?
Yeah, my whole life.
Amazing. This is our first recording experience in our Greenville live experience. And so it's a first thing for everyone where we have a real setup, a real live studio. So you're one of our first guests to have on, which is amazing. So we appreciate you being here.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
I think one of the most interesting parts of your story that I'd love for you to tell is your journey into B2B e-commerce. I think you had some technical e-commerce things really, really early, but the majority of yours has kind of started in the business and then come to e-com. And I'm curious to hear your journey and where that started there in Texas, and walk us through it.
Yeah, so I started more on the the B2C side. Started my own Shopify store and back in the drop shipping era. And really kind of got my foundation there. And then started over at the HVAC distribution side, which is really a kind of an industry that has, a lot of easy adoption. A lot of the systems are very set in stone. And so you can really get a website going and get adoption raised, very fast compared to, the current industry I'm in, which is industrial, hose and fittings. So it's, big difference there.
How old were you when you did the B2C side?
Yeah, so I was about 19 when I started my first store.
Okay, so in college?
Yeah, so in college, my junior year of college at Baylor. Had a buddy who came down and moved in with us, and he was already kind of started into that drop shipping store. He had a couple different websites running, and I was didn't really have an internship yet, so I was like, let's start off with this and get some experience, learn a little bit about business, from starting my own business. And really kind of hit the ground running, opened up about 2 or 3 different stores and really got an understanding for, the foundation of, the B2C side, which, a lot of that transfers over to the B2B aspects of a business, and definitely learned a lot. And I think it's, helped a lot with adoption. I think I really understood, moving from B2C to B2B, it's very different. You can look at a lot of the metrics on the B2C side and really, pull a lot of levers that are pretty obvious to see from, analytics side. But B2B is, it's customers that are at their day job, purchasing from us and trying to really build an experience out that saves them time. And then that's the purpose, to save them time, make it more convenient, make it more efficient for them. So, they have more time in their day.
You talked about HVAC having, being relatively easy to roll out a website. Do you, any insights into why it's so much easier in HVAC than maybe in industrial and other categories? Yeah,
with HVAC, everything has AHRI matchups. So systems, a condenser and a furnace, they have certain matchups. So you choose a certain condenser, you're going to have 7 to 10 options for your next component. So it has a very set structure of how they purchase. And so there's not much customization. So like on the industrial side, it's very custom jobs. You need a lot of the industry knowledge to, build out a project and get that quoted. This is more of, residential where, a homeowner needs a system fast and it's kind of the first availability. Whatever they have, they'll make it work and they can kind of switch out, components based on availability. And, when I was there, it was during COVID. So, a lot of inventory shortages and issues. And that's really when we started to really grow rapidly online because everyone was kind of transferring to, more of that digital side once, everyone's at home in quarantine. And that's also why the digital side scaled so much because everyone's home using their AC units at a higher load because everyone's working remote. So that's really kind of where we hit the ground running when I joined there, and digital started being our main focus because it no longer was just a secondary part of the business that we just had a website. It was the way that our customers shop from us, and it was the way that they did business with us with more benefits, more value, and more efficiency.
Did you start the e-commerce at that company, or did you inherit the systems and platforms into it?
So I inherited about 2 or 3 years into the process. So we were still at a pretty low adoption. I mean, we had about maybe 2 or 3 million in revenue, under 2-3% of split of the revenue online. By the time I left, we were sitting at a little over 50 million and about 25% of revenue. So, that was over a 5-year period. So it was very rapid. And it's just, kind of snowball effect. Once you started getting down that route and really finding the value for the contractors, then, that kind of the spread of, this is what's happening with that business and why we're working with them and why we're shopping with them. And then it really kind of just expanded from there.
What were some of the first things you did back then to go? I mean, 2 to 25 is a massive jump. What were some of the first things that you felt like could improve adoption?
Yeah, and the first thing really was understanding the audience and what the customer was looking for. It was helpful for me because previously I'd worked at the branch level. So I was able to see the operations work in that day to day and then be able to transfer that over. So I kind of already had an idea of what our customers were looking for. And that was the biggest key, is building tools that actually gave them value. Because, there's plenty of HVAC distributors out there. Most of the units have the same, end purpose, but it's the service and it's the tools that, help them drive their business. Because the HVAC side, a lot of it's mom and pop companies that are just starting out. They might be, running their company out of their garage. Like for me, my neighbor across the street has been a customer at the company I worked for 25 years. And so, having him as an example of how to model the website and make it simple, but also add value, and almost really have it in 3 different targets. One for a very basic entry level customer that hasn't shopped from us with us much. The next level for someone that's more of a, call it 5 to 10 trucks, and they're really starting to expand. And then your massive ones, 20 trucks plus, and just really have tools for different segments so that they had a place for them in the website.
Were there different of those kind of 3 main segments? Were there ones that were just easier to transition than others?
Usually so. I think the mid-size were always the easiest because they were growing so fast. They know that they're trying to get to that next level, and they're willing to kind of take on any type of technology that's going to help them make their job day to day easier.
You talked about being at the branch. Like, what kind of roles did you have prior to inheriting the e-com?
So I started off, entry level, was, sweeping up the warehouse, loading up trucks, did a little bit of the counter sales as well. So kind of got a good mixture of understanding, the back house and what it really took to deliver the product to the customer. And then also the, inside sales of, delivering that value to the customer service side of things. So got to see both aspects of it before, went off to college and then came back into the business after.
So you started at the branch in high school?
Yep. So it's a family business. So my grandfather started the business a little over 40 years ago. So it's kind of like the family tradition that you're required as one of the men in the family to work in the warehouse. And they made sure that you were the lowest in the totem pole. You're cleaning the bathrooms, you're cleaning the warehouse, but it builds a lot of character, and you learn about the business from the base level up.
So many people now, they kind of skip those, at least what we've heard is people kind of skipping that part of actually learning the business, maybe getting a degree and then coming in and trying to apply their degree to it. Like what were some of the things that you learned early on in, sweeping the floors and working logistics?
I really learned quickly that, the branch operations is the toughest job in the entire company.
Mm.
I mean, you get a lot of pressure from the corporate side, from the customers. You're expected to deliver at all times and be perfect. And, the one time you miss, that it can be really affect a person's business because, we're selling to other businesses and it could be, for example, some, an elderly person without, heat in the winter. I mean, there's, it's life or death situations as well. And if we don't deliver, then, you get that pressure. So you learn the scale and the, importance of what you're doing. And it also really helps when you apply it to the website of, these guys are trying to fulfill requests as quickly as possible to bring a service to someone. And if they get to your website and they run into issues or the search doesn't work well and they can't find what they're looking for, they're going to do what the easiest thing is, which is to pick up their phone and call their salesman.
Hmm. So you started your family business and then you moved to a new company. Talk about the new company that you're a part of now.
Yeah, so now I'm a part of ARG Industrial. So we are a hose and fitting distributor based out of the Pacific Northwest in Alaska. It's a complete 100% employee-owned company. Really have digital buy-in from the top down. Our CEO, Mike Mortensen, is one of the leaders in the industry when it comes to digital. He really pushes it on other companies and tries to explain the value of what digital is and what the purpose of the whole digital transformation. Compared to the HVAC industry, we're probably 5 to 10 years behind the curve. We still have a lot of, even our manufacturers and vendors that are, hesitant to give up product data, and they're not still seeing the image of what's to come, and the transformation that's really already happening in plenty of industries.
You just a side note on that. A lot of distributors kind of require in-person work, and I know a lot of your team is. I mean, your boss is up in New York and you're in Dallas. Like, like how is that acceptable inside the company? Is that kind of a company-wide thing or kind of digital and tech being able to work from home?
Yeah, previous HVAC distribution, it was all in person, and that it has some benefits to it as well. Being able to be really close to the operations, all the different teams, your pricing, inventory, et cetera. But it's a great opportunity to work remote and have a blend. So you go out there and visit on site and still get an idea of what the operations are, but you're able to start these digital websites and build these platforms anywhere in the world and still feel connected to the business. We have weekly stand-up calls with all our branch managers and hearing feedback on the website, what they're hearing from customers. So I think either one works well. It's just when you're on the digital side and you're working remote, you really have to work hard to get feedback, because if they don't feel like you're open to feedback or you don't give them enough opportunities to give feedback, then you can become pretty disconnected from the business fast.
You mentioned you have digital buy-in from the top, from Mike, your CEO. What's different about that? Like, how does that translate inside of the work that you guys do inside of the digital department?
I mean, you feel supported in every sense. You don't have to fight battles, which, when we were at the B2B eCommerce Association conference in Scottsdale, all I heard from others was, I'm constantly fighting with my boss to, get more budget or get projects approved. But it's actually sometimes the opposite. Mortensen will call and ask about, here's this idea I had and, how can we get this done? And, having someone who's more of a visionary, and he's really the kind of person that will just think of an idea and he's ready to jump on it and go. We're not sitting around, analyzing for months upon months, going through the budget. It's let's make it happen. I'm here to support you with what you need, but he has full trust that we're able to execute on that digital transformation vision that he has too.
10 years ago, that industry, it's not like you were just behind in that hose and fitting industry. It was anti e-commerce. If I remember correctly, like, companies were encouraged not to do e-commerce in that industry. How has that changed over the last 5 to 10 years? Or why?
I think it's gotten much better, and I think even the past year or two, it's improved a ton. I think people are starting to see the value. I mean, everyone's starting to at least at a minimum shop on Amazon, and there's plenty of other websites out there, but they're starting to see the value more and more, because there's less cost. You have to have less people in your branches. You can be more efficient, hire less salesmen. It just opens up people's options for what they can invest in their business. Because if you're investing into people, which is probably the most um, expensive thing in a business, then you don't really have the money or time to invest in digital. But when you have such a strong digital platform and presence, you're able to put more investment into that and be able to focus on the core of what you deliver and value when it comes to your branch operations.
So one of the objections I hear all the time, especially from the sales organization, so kind of branch and then sales organization of, they give some of the biggest pushback in digital. How do your actual people respond to digital inside of your organization differently?
You still always have those that are going to push back against it, and that mainly comes from them being uncomfortable with the platform itself. They can get used to a website with time and effort, and that's what it takes is having both aspects of that is effort one-on-one and in a group setting. So showing them in a non-pressure environment, hey, here's these features, here's what's important, and really framing it kind of like a sales playbook. Here's the top 5 sales plays that you can have when it comes to digital and how that conversation goes. We recently had a summit a few weeks ago, and we had a whole session for about 2 hours on digital that really just talked about the main conversations that you should be having with your customers. And it's really helped a ton because it frames them for it, even if they're not someone that's very tech savvy. Having these 3 conversations and then bringing someone like me into the conversation to kind of support you is really the only level of competency they need to know with the website itself. So I think that's taken a lot of time, and it takes trust because they also need to trust the fact that if they have an issue or something comes up in a meeting where someone asks a question regarding the platform and they don't know the answer, they need to know that they can call me or call someone on my team and get an answer almost immediately. So that they have that that sense of live support and trust that while they're pushing digital, you're still there to be a resource and back them up.
How much emphasis do you guys provide on actual marketing or selling or training your internal people and your customers versus, a lot of times we think of digital as this, like we do things, right? We build technology, we build platforms, we move data around. And what I'm hearing from you a little more is that a lot, maybe some of your time is spent actually training your internal people, responding to your internal people, and actually training customers. How much emphasis do you guys provide on that?
Right now, I'm putting the majority of my emphasis
Really?
on the internal because I think a lot of people have it the opposite, where they're so focused on pushing marketing towards their customers and marketing what they're building and tools, which are great. But if your own internal staff are not bought into those same tools, then they're never going to bring those conversations up to their customers in person. They have to feel comfortable with it. They have to understand it, and they have to feel prepared to have those conversations. And so really like right now, my main focus, because I'm only been about a year into being at ARG, and my primary focus has just been, educating our internal staff so that they are prepared at the branch level, even at the counter. And, so that if someone walks up and asks a question of how do I register on the website or how do I check inventory online, that they're able to answer like the base level questions. And then, hey, but if you have more questions, reach out to myself, and they can walk through a larger demo. So it's been really important for us, and our adoption since I've joined is almost doubled, and it's taken a lot of work and time and conversations, and there's a lot of pushback. I mean, it's not something that just is like a light switch that turns on. It's a gradual hill you have to climb, and you're gonna fall a couple times and get back up and continue going. And I think we're at the point where the whole team really understands what we're trying to go towards, and now this 2026, we're kind of flipping now to be more customer facing when it comes to adoption and pushing out marketing materials to our customers for them to understand, what value we have to give when it comes to the digital side.
I'm curious on, okay, so yeah, with this relationship that you have with your executive team, from what I can tell, first of all, your boss, Mike Powers, and Mike, like they're just, everybody's kind of joined at the hip on this. So it feels like everybody's on the same page, which is a really...
They call it the Mike and Mike show.
The Mike and Mike show. I love it. In fact, I was texting back and forth with Mike. I just got a Mac Mini to run some CloudBot stuff, and I knew he would geek out I knew he'd geek out on it. So when I sent it, I immediately got 7 texts about YouTube videos that I should look up and watch. He's one of my favorite people to talk about that stuff with. But so with that relationship, what are the things that you guys actually track monthly, and what do you kind of present to that team, to that executive team that has meaning to them? And what was it when you came in, when you first came into the picture?
Yeah, when I first joined, we had a Power BI dashboard like most, and it was very cluttered, lots of information, and frankly, looking around at it, you can't really take any really important takeaways from it. You're like, this is just a lot of data, a lot of information, but what does it really mean? So we really try to simplify it. Had a dashboard with maybe I think 5 or 6 things on it that are really kind of our key core focuses, and that's active customers ordering online, new customers registered online, existing customers that registered online, the e-pen percentage, so just the percentage of revenue. And that's kind of the main ones we're looking at. And I think the really important one is the existing customers registering online, because we've had our website for a while now, but our existing customers were the ones that had the lowest adoption rates.
Mhm.
Our customers that had just come in the past 1 to 3 years had much higher adoption rates because our customers were so established in the process of reaching out to their salesman or reaching out to the guy they know at the branch that knows what their projects are and what they're expecting from an outcome. So that really shifted a lot and was a big number that we're focused on, because with the whole side of internal adoption, if that number is not steadily rising consistently, then I'm not doing my job, teaching our internal outside sales staff, how to use the website, how to register customers, and how to get them at least in that core foundation on the website.
Do you guys track or in any way like digital influence, like what orders maybe happen offline that were influenced by online? Do you have any way of doing that?
So right now we're not, but it's actually something that Powers and I have been talking about, doing some analytics on that, because with our industry, there's a lot of revenue that probably could be attributed to the digital branch,
Mhm.
but it's not, because they use the website to either find information, check inventory availability, pricing, and they might get very far through the process. Even some get through the checkout process and then take a screenshot of that cart and then bring it in as a printout. So it's kind of a wide mix of customers that use it in different ways and still get value from it, but they're not necessarily going through the end checkout process. So it's not something we're currently tracking, but it's definitely something we want to look at in 2026.
Mhm. To wrap up, do you have any insights? You talked about at the conference, and I heard it too, just people struggling with how do I get executive alignment? And it just continues to be a major theme we hear over and over again. Do you have any insights for people that don't have that alignment of things they can or should be focusing on to get maybe not full alignment, but to get at least more alignment and improve that?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece of advice is talk about it often and be very open with the wins. I think that's the one big thing that I've really pushed is a lot of our sales calls now, we start with wins and go through the digital wins specifically, not just the business, but like what wins we have on the digital side, because most of the executive or upper sales team are on those calls. And so being able to walk through and show them examples of how their salesmen are out there winning new business jobs, from using the digital branch, it really just helps the executive level see that there's value in this outside of here's another aspect or another option for customers to go shop from us. They're already shopping from us, so it's not additional revenue, but they start understanding when they go on the website and we have matching items, recommendations, and on average their cart values are higher on the website. So there's more incremental sales, more value, and it's not just a website. It's a platform that connects them with us, and it makes the company sticky with us long term, because let's say our VMI process, they get integrated with that digitally. That's something they want to have going forward and into the future. They're not going to disconnect from that because we've given them that value through the website, through a tool that's been built for them that keeps them with us for years to come. And it's brought a value to them. It helps us not have to have many people going through, manually checking VMIs and refilling bins. So it's probably a long-winded answer for that.
No, that's
but
great. Who are your kind of key partners that you guys interact with on a regular basis, and walk me through how you, like, what's your relationship with kind of your key technology partners?
Yeah, so our main partner is Impacts. So Impacts we use for everything when it comes to implementations, enhancements, which I go through plenty of those. So the relationship really is really dependent on how the customer wants to use them. So, I mean, for me, I have a project manager that I work with really closely, and we walk through the strategy, we walk through the vision of what we're looking to accomplish, and we really establish, the timeline of what we want to do, how we want to have it, the effect on the customer's end, and really they execute everything from there. And that's the best part is that I'm able to focus on the internal adoption and focus on understanding the business, the model, and how it flows day to day. And I don't have to worry about the minute details because I know I have a partner that is looking out for us, that has a lot of experience with plenty of other distributors as well that can really help push our vision forward in the right direction.
Finding a good partner is incredibly difficult. What are some of the key things that you think is important to be part of that relationship?
I think honesty. Honesty is a big one because, it's a two-way street. You have to give a lot of information, a lot of trust in someone else going through and building, a platform for you and building enhancements that, cost money and are a, significant investment, and you want to see an ROI from that. So it's really honest about, deadlines, whether deadlines going to be missed or not. And having that constant communication back and forth, because it's a partnership. It's an extension of our team. It's not just someone who helps manage our website. It's our development partner, our project manager, our marketing. I mean, it's a huge part of what we do day to day, and it helps me be able to do my job more efficiently.
Often, you have other technology partners that your Impacts has to deal with, and they're implementing. Like, how do you work through conflict over, the what can be built, what should be built, what you want to be built, the cost, the timeline of that? Like, how do you guys work through that together when both of you are at the mercy? It doesn't matter what the platform is, right? You're always at the mercy of the constraints of the technology that you're using. How do you guys kind of work through that?
On my end, I like to push the limits. So I push on Impacts to kind of show us where the true bounds are. So, I might see an idea from another website or while I'm shopping for something, and then I'm like, let's talk with Impacts, see if we can make this happen with our platform and our ERP, because that's where those the two limitations usually come from. So I rely on them a lot because I know there's probably a few developers that know my name because I've sent them plenty of crazy requests, and the majority of the time they're like, we can find a way to do it. And that's what a partner is someone that you might come to them with an idea that you just wrote down on a napkin, but they can take that, visualize it, give me a Figma design for it, and then, in the end, execute it.
Your other partner, Unilog, also feels like they're the type of partner that also listens and takes requests and incorporates that into the strategy that they have moving forward. Talk a little bit about that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a member of the customer advisory board for Unilog. So I work with, many of their leaders very closely, and that's something that they've improved on a lot in the past 3-4 years. They're really kind of getting that direct customer feedback and trying to improve and reiterate the platform in a direction that the customer base wants. So I think that's been, a huge thing. And when we've had great success using the platform. And with Impacts on the other side of it, helping add on enhancements that the platform might be limited on, or this is not the specialty of the platform itself, has been huge. And having two partners in Unilog and Impacts that are both open to allowing us to get into the back end, no restrictions, and just allowing us to build what we want and an experience that makes sense for our customer base.
Amazing. AJ, appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Manufacturers, distributors, leaders in the zone. If you're building B2B, this the podcast throne. The industry's heartbeat, we're setting the tone. Turn insights to actions, it's how empires are grown.